Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the monthly membership training. My name is Oyindamola Aramide, and I work with the Nigerian Network of NGOs. And I'm happy to introduce the RSH team and my co-chair, Dr. Elena Owadinobi. And so today, the Nigerian Network of NGOs, in partnership with RSH, have come together to organize this training for members of the Nigerian Network of NGOs. You know, as civil society organizations, we know that there are certain things that we should know to help our organizations be the best versions of, organizations within the civil society. And one of the things that are important for civil society organizations to note is things that have to do with, the success of our organization, our staff, and the way that, our staff and the people that we interact with as civil society organizations, how we deal with sexual exploitation, harassment, and abuse. And what are some of those practices that civil society organizations should begin to, put in place to help us ensure that, we are not victims of abuse, our staff are not, at risk of being exploited sexually or in other areas. And that is why this training has been put together, why we're partnering with RSH to ensure that we deliver this training to our members and they're equipped with some of this knowledge. Now, let me bring Dr. Eleanor Owadinobi so that she can also, welcome participants. Thank you so much for joining. Dr. Eleanor.
Oh, thank you so very much, co-chair of this event, Oyindamola Aramide. It's such a delight to be with you all today. I'm Dr. Eleanor Owadinobi. I'm the Senior Advisor of the Nigeria Resource and Support Hub. I also wear another hat as the International President of the Medical Women's International Association. RSH is building a dynamic relationship with the Nigeria Network of Non-Governmental Organizations, Triple NGO. And this webinar today is to introduce the members of Triple NGO to safe communications and safeguarding. So we will be providing an overview of safe communications and how to ensure that we do no harm. We're going to be hearing about what is needed, what the risks are, how to mitigate them, etc. Our last joint webinar tailored to NNGO, Triple NGO, was in February, on the 17th of February. Some of you were with us when we had Safeguarding 101. A few housekeeping issues. We will, after the presentation, have a live Q&A session. If you would like to ask any questions during the presentation, you can find the Q&A function in the controls panel at the bottom of your screen, and you can upvote any existing questions. The chat will also be open, so please do add comments, questions, and do share your experiences. Well, enough of that introduction. Let me introduce our panelists for today in the person of Oge Chukwudozie. Oge is the RSH National Associate. She is a safeguarding and protection professional with over 15 years of experience in the aid sector, in the humanitarian sector, and she has worked with several organizations in different positions. But her passion lies with safeguarding. And therefore, our esteemed participants, allow me to hand over the microphone to our panelists for today, Oge Chukwudozie. Over to you, Oge.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elena. Thank you all NNNGO members. I'm happy to be a panelist again in this our webinar, this quarterly webinar we have. I think we should be looking forward to that because it always promises to be interesting and engaging. As has been introduced, the topic we have for today is on safe communications. I'm sure for all of us, we've had communication materials, taking pictures, one way or the other in our program, in your programs. And it also provides an opportunity for us to reflect more on some of the questions that came on from the last webinar we had. We had that last webinar titled Safeguarding 101, just to provide an overview of what safeguarding is. And there was a question there around taking pictures and, between difference between safeguarding and child protection, and how to take pictures even when the beneficiaries are not, giving consent for that. So we want to dive deeper into the topic around communications and how to make it safe. Thank you. Next slide, please, Sylvia. Yes, please bring up. Yes, so when we talk about communication, what is communication? For us in this sector, for the aid sector specifically, for the purposes of this training, this webinar, communication, it's about the images or sound recording and text, including stories or case studies or quotes that, individuals provide for us for our activities. And this can be, shared using various media like TV, radio, newspapers, and, more widely the social media, which is now being promoted and utilized very widely. Also websites like RSH, we have a website, and we have, several information and resources on our website, including quotes and stories from people. Even email communication is also a form of communication and all that. So basically that's, the ambient we are using for communication. That's what communication means for us. So in any way that as an organization, you capture people's stories, be it by video clip, be it by voice recording, audio, be it by pictures. I know for organizations, donors, they usually ask for means of verification. And, all those means of verification are data that are being, processed. So let's see how really to make sure that those communications are safe. Next slide, please, Sylvia. So what is safe communication? In totality, really simplified, it's about doing no harm in our media and communication. So in all the way that we share stories and information of people, from gathering to sharing, it's all that, to ensure that we are not doing harm to people. Dr. Lennon mentioned it earlier when we started. So safe communication is ensuring that we do no harm. The do no harm principle is actually the underlying principle for safeguarding. So in all that we do, we should not harm the people we are meant to support. Next slide. Again, continued, communication is an important part of any organization's advocacy, media, publications that we have. So communications must not pose any potential or actual risk to the subject because of the material generated. And they must respect the privacy and dignity of the subjects. All communication material should be obtained, developed, stored, distributed, and published in a safe manner with permission and consent. The increasing use of social media poses additional risk. I'm sure you realize that things go viral in a short while, and challenges for safeguarding. So clear guidance on the use of social media or online platforms can help organizations mitigate these specific risks. So here basically is talking about, here basically is talking about, how we should not pose any harm, based on the way we communicate. So whatever materials that are generated, we should make sure that actual or potential risk is not there. So it's even important to have a risk assessment, for our communication materials. Even we have organizations have communication strategy. So as part of that communication strategy, have risk assessment of your communication, to ensure that whatever materials and resources you're using is not causing harm or is not going to cause harm to the beneficiaries. Yes, now, next. So what does this mean? Continue and have it all out. So breaking this down, we're looking at how we collect information. The way we collect information can actually cause harm, and then how we store information. How we store information can cause harm. How we share the information can cause harm. Even the person that has access, if the information that is shared goes outside to the intended recipients, that may also cause harm. How, whoever has access to that, because, like we say, information is power. When you have information, data of someone, it can be used in various means. So it's important that, across these 4 areas, that we are making sure that, we are not causing harm across these 4 areas. So in addition to just, it's not just about collecting the information, that is one part, but the way it is shared, the way it is stored, the way it's processed, the way, all can cause harm. And we need to be careful and ensuring that what we do across these 4 areas is not causing harm to people. So we're going to look at them one after the other to see what we can actually do in these 4 aspects to ensure we are having safe communications. Next. So in how we collect information, people should not be pressurized to tell their stories for our communication materials. I know organizations, yes, because you want to share what you are doing with your donor and your funder, rightly so, but you shouldn't now put people under pressure, your beneficiaries, your program participants, the community members. You shouldn't put them under pressure to tell their story. If any is not willing to share, please leave that person and seek for another person that, is willing to share. Because by pressurizing, then that may actually cause harm. Maybe that person doesn't want to share, for one reason or the other. It might even be a child, be it a child, be it an adult. Really, people should not be pressurized, if they don't want to share story, to share their stories. And so in same manner, participation should be voluntary, so that they want, so it's about making it clear, oh, okay, we are having this communication, maybe your media person is coming, or you have a journalist coming, or you have a donor coming, we usually have different people that come around, or you program staff. Usually for smaller organizations, there is no distinction between communication staff and program staff. It's the program staff that take the pictures, that do the interviews, that collect these materials for comms, for communication, materials. So in all this, really, participation should be voluntary. People shouldn't be pressurized or be threatened. You won't say, oh, yes, if you don't share your story, then that means we won't be able to, we won't come to this community again, so that's like a threat, and shouldn't be. Of course, getting informed consent, it's important. And I must say that informed consent really goes beyond. I've worked in different organizations where we said, oh, yes, we get consent, but in actual fact, we don't really get that consent. It's more like a blanket thing, and we assume that people should be happy to have their pictures or be happy to have their stories aired. But indeed, for that participation to be voluntary, to show that it's voluntary, informed consent, needs to be gotten. And what is this informed consent? The person needs to fully understand what what is being asked of him or her. So where will this information be used? The person needs to understand. If the person is giving consent for for your reports, then that person might not want it in online websites. And when they now see that on a platform that is open to all, it might not be. So whatever different categories, what you will use the materials for, the pictures, the blogs, the quotes, should be provided, should be provided, that look, yes, it should be made, it should be clarified that look, this is what we will be using your pictures, your quotes for. You might see it in online, you might see it in some of, if you have a website, you might see it in our website, we'll be putting it in our website, and all. If not, then, to just make it clear so that the person understands. Even when it's also a research, people should also know, what the research is about. Research, you also collect, you're asking people, you're collecting a lot of data. So it's important too that, these things are followed. It's also about communication, so it's important that the person or the people understand what you want to do with the materials, and also know that someone has the right to also withdraw their consent. Consent doesn't mean it's, it's all like it's forever. Someone today, a survivor today, might be willing to share their story, probably because, yes, they, for them, it's okay at this point in time, but maybe their situation in life changes. Maybe they get married and maybe the spouse doesn't want, or maybe later in life and they're like, no, I actually don't want this part of my life to be public anymore. It's theirs, it's their own decision to make. So, but what happens is that, of course, there need to be clause, that even when you're withdrawing consent, that you have the right to withdraw consent. But when we have utilized it in online platforms, then we might not be able to we don't have control over how it's used. So the person even knows ahead of time. So if you're using in online platforms, then, you can pull down yours, but you're not going to confirm that people who have downloaded that material will pull down, theirs. So, but it's important that the people really understand what, that has been asked of them. And again, if it's face-to-face interviews, these days, yes, we do lots of now online and virtual interviews. But for community members who still don't have access to the Zoom that we are using now to have this training, or maybe even normal phone, it might be face-to-face meetings, face-to-face interviews. The location should be safe. So when selecting location, it's also about how you collect that information. The location should be safe, not just for the beneficiary or community member, but for the staff as well, so that, it's a place that has been risk assessed, that no risk will come to the staff, because as you are protecting as you're safeguarding the community members, you also want to safeguard your staff as well. And then I have this, that retelling a traumatic story is dangerous. A lot of times, we want people to tell us, maybe as a survivor, you want to collect as many times, or even different organization A will go to this community, interact with this person and want to get their story. And then you come, you want to get your story. And then, before you know it, you see that, this person continues retelling their story. Such retelling can actually be dangerous, and it re-traumatizes the person. So as much as possible, do not go into the point where someone is retelling. But when maybe you don't know, and but you notice at that point that you're going to interview, and then you notice at that point that, oh, this person has actually shared this story before, you can now find out how they are feeling at the present, not necessarily in terms of what happened to the past, which you can now get, from other sources, but more of how they are feeling at the present, to just, be aware of re-emphasizing them and, their feeling, and not necessarily going back to what happened previously. Again, be age appropriate while interviewing. The questions you will ask a 7-year-old and how you will phrase that is definitely different from what you will ask a 16-year-old. They are all children, but and then it's also different from what you ask a 24 or a 35 or a 60. So in the way you frame your questions, please ensure that they are age appropriate. These resources, the information that I used for this particular slide is actually from our online hub, from Save the Children, a Save the Children resource there about interviewing with children. It's there, and you can always go to the hub to get more. Sylvia will also share the link later on in this chat. Next slide, please. Now, let's look at how we store and share information. We ensure the privacy and security of all participants of comms and media work. So ensure the privacy and security of all participants. So as you're storing the information, ensure that there is private, that there is security, of whatever, information and data you collect. Ensure data protection and privacy. There is now laws around data protection, how information should be shared and stored. Then ensuring transmission, storage, and sharing of data adheres to data security requirements, and then puts data agreements in place with any third parties. In some instances, you might be working with a third party, maybe like a journalist. You have journalists, you have these media people, formalmedia.com, or even photographers that come and take pictures of you. You should have a form of agreement with them on how to actually share those pictures, knowing that, like, for photographers and videographers, that they are not sending this picture to any other person. They signed something, so having that will really ensure that we store and share the information appropriately. No one who doesn't have access to information should be able to get the information we have. So it's very important that we ensure data protection, we ensure privacy and security of all our communications and media work. Next slide, please. Who has access to information? So of course, like we've mentioned, that data should only be accessible to those who are meant to have it. And if you are using digital devices to record responses in phone, or even if it's a face-to-face data collection, first you need to set up password protection, and auto lock on devices is important. It's part of protecting the information so that nobody will pick up your phone and be able to go through your messages. Set up encryption on devices, like WhatsApp has encrypted, it's an encrypted messaging device. So use that where possible. And you also set up your own, depending on the information you're sharing. Some people collect data using some of these online tools like Kobo Collect and some others. So making sure really that those information are not accessible to other people. Set up auto deletion of data after transferring to central database. You can have that. Encrypt transmission. The IT people will be able to support on this to ensure that really the information you're having. And if it's a file hard copy, make sure, of course, that the files and information are under lock and key. For your laptop, make sure that your laptop is passworded and no other person has access to, that's why all these measures are there, that no other person has access to your laptop to be able to get information from it. So that, the information is only meant to those who should have access to the information. Next. All right, so now this is our final slide as a reminder. Ensure that there is adequate policies and procedures developed and implemented, including on when data should be destroyed and deleted. So you should have, as part of maybe your safeguarding policy, it should be there as a section around safe communications or data protection, whatever you might call it. There should be a section there. Or if you want to have a special data protection policy, then you can also have that. So having adequate policies and procedures, where even when you should destroy your data, it's important. Yes, you cannot have data forever. That's people's information. So you should have like a policy that says, depending on the donors you're working with, you can use that now to develop yours. If it's after 10 years, then that, look, after 10 years, all the information, all the personal data of people we've collected will destroy, if it's 15 years, if it's 20 years, but have a time frame so that information, when people move and go, information that is sensitive will not still continue to be there. And, train communications media staff, consultants, and or journalists. So anybody that comes in contact with the organization should know, about this, about making sure that they don't share pictures of people that they collect, and they should make sure that the pictures they take maintain dignity, of people. So training communications and media staff, consultants who come in to support you briefly, journalists that come in for visits, all should be trained on safe communications. Ensure images are dignified and respectful. Yes. So also, you have to ensure that images they take of children, you don't take naked pictures, you don't take, you take major images that are dignified and respectful. Conceal identities and locations, especially for children and survivors, where sometimes you see in TV where they blur faces or they use a black pad to cover the line. So in whatever, you should not have the face and the real name and, location of someone, out there in the open that person can be easily traced. That is something that we need to do. So these are like few points on what safe communication is and what we need to do to maintain safe communication. And because by having safe communication, safe communication is safeguarding, it's part of, protecting, ensuring that we do not harm the people through our communication work. So thank you very much. At this point, I'll hand back over to Dr. Leno, and we'll have questions.
Thank you so very much, Oge. That was a truly illuminating presentation on safe communications and safeguarding. This is the time now for questions and answers. You can indicate if you would like to ask a live question by raising your hand, and Sylvia, our colleague, will unmute you, or you can put your question in the chat, and then we will take the first set of questions, after which I'll hand over to my co-chair, Oyedamola Aramide, so that we can share this wonderful task of facilitating the questions and answers. So please do indicate by raising your hand. I see a hand raised by Amy Oyekunle. So you will be unmuted, Amy, so that you can ask your question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Eleanor, and thank you, Oge. Always a pleasure. My question is, what if harm was caused, not by your own action? And let me explain what I mean. A few years ago when I started, we had a case of a young girl who was at the time abused when she was 12 years old. But at the time we got the case, she was 17. And when we got the case, we had taken the case to the police station, and a very overly eager press person was at the police station at the time, and he got her name, her address, unknown to us. We didn't know he did that. And based on that, wrote an article, put her name, put her address. Her father was one that had abused her, and it was in the papers. What do you do in that regard? Over.
Thank you very much, Amy. Nice to have you here in this webinar. Yeah, very interesting question you have there, and a difficult one. And that's why, we say for anybody who comes in touch with our beneficiaries to be trained. And, for us, like for this particular case, it's understandable that you weren't the one that invited the journalists, but, the journalists being overly ambitious, probably trying to meet their targets to the detriment of another. And that really calls for even question of following up with such a journalist. But in this case, as a way to avoid such occurrences will be to inform your beneficiaries, like such specific, like such survivors, or the beneficiaries, in a sense, that they shouldn't answer questions of any journalist who is not officially, or anybody even at that, because they might not know if the person is a journalist or not. But they don't have to answer any questions of anybody that comes, and they know that, and this person is still, even at that time 17, is still a child, haven't even reached the 18 mark, so such a child needs to really be protected. Such a child needs, and such a child, even being in that police station, should be with someone, that will ensure that such news news-driven journalists or persons don't come around to be able to have access to the person to ask questions. But where it has happened, it will now be about continuous counseling now and providing psychosocial support to the child in question, and then even trying to get hold of the journalists and maybe reports to their manager that such querying of children, because before they even, it's ethical that before you take a question, you take answers from a child, you should have parental consent. So where is that? Who gave the consent for that child to be interviewed and for it to be in the open public with the pictures and all? So I think such a case needs to be taken up with the media station, but again the child needs to be supported psychologically and be informed that, look, you don't have to answer every question that comes. And then, next time, making sure that children as such, or even survivor, might not even be a child, but any survivor is really vulnerable, there should be someone really who is able to provide that care at the time they are in relationship with the organization. So like they're going to police station, someone should be with them and shouldn't allow them to answer to anybody, without this person's consent. Thank you. Maybe Dr. Eleanor might also have something to add.
Yes, thank you indeed, Oge. You've so eloquently responded, and it just reminds me that yes, children should be chaperoned, and we do have quite a bit of work to do in also spreading this type of information to the journalists and the media constituency as a whole. And you mentioned during your presentation how communications and safeguarding, how that's at different ages. It's not a one size fit all. But apart from age, also the fact that time frame. So maybe, let's say, a 17-year-old, let's start with a 14-year-old who maybe consent was given by their parents or their chaperone, but you might find that same minor, when the person maybe gets into their 20s, as you said, might not want a picture for which consent was given when they were a minor, still up on social media or wherever it might be, even though it's blurred and the name is concealed. That individual, to avoid re-traumatizing, might want the incident blotted out completely. And, that will have to be respected. So, permission may have been given 4 years ago, but 4 years later, the survivor can still come back and say, even though my details don't appear, I would like them taken down. So I think the next hand that went up, it came from Nma Obonna, and then after Nma Obonna, Abiodun Aderebiwe. So please unmute Nma Obonna. Go ahead, please, with your question or comment. Are you able to unmute Nma Obonna?
You're on mute. Good morning, House. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, ma'am. During the presentation, I am sorry that I entered late because of network, but finally when I entered at a certain stage, I saw where that is the presenter showed in her slide. That is about the time we delete our records, or maybe destroying it or removing it. It is very obvious and important that we know as NGO, as organizations, that before we go into it, it is always very essential or important to know the laws guiding the periods some records should stay. Because as an organization, those are there, but we don't usually look at it from that perspective, because at a certain stage, when you destroy it, the of see it or foresaw it before it comes, and these documents could be needed, or such information or vitally be proven situations. So we usually advise people to have a kind of some lawyers that they keep as their legal advisors to such NGOs, so that they will help them to know the real period or the necessity of knowing when to destroy their records. Thank God the software packages are available now that you can even go as far as procuring some and then be trained on how to use it, so that it will now compress these records. That's what I wish to remind that's the class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mma. Okay, before you take the give an answer, I'll ask Abiodun Aderebiwe to ask their own question, so that you take the answers together, after which we'll then hand over the chair. Thank you.
Oh, hello. Good morning, everyone. Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Fine. Fine. Thank you for, and I want to thank our guest speaker for that wonderful presentation. In fact, it's an eye-opener for some of us who have not been taking the issue of safe communication as a big deal. I want to ask a question and follow it up with this thing, with a thought. When is the right time to seek consent? Okay, because I went for a UN function in I think in March, and there was this organization that was distributing well-packed honey in Kenya. So the selected people at random, and I was selected. We took some pictures together. So then after the picture, I think they gave us honey. With the honey, we took pictures. They didn't tell us they are going to use the picture. We didn't sign any consent then. But a month after, they sent this mail to me that they want to use my picture at Davos with in one of their presentations, that I should give them consent. So when is the right time? I didn't give the consent. I didn't reply their mail, and I'm still monitoring if they'll use the picture or not, because I don't want them to present, the way they present Africans as beggars. It was just a complimentary gift that I saw, but now they are seeking for consent. Thank you.
Okay, please, can you answer the two questions? And I think there's a related one from Gloria Ken Idehen in the chat that says, is it wrong to take pictures of your beneficiaries to advertise the work that your organization is doing? So can you take the 3 questions together, please?
Thank you very much, Dr. Lena. So in terms of seeking consent, for the appropriate time to seek consent is actually even before the picture is taken. And then if it's what somebody said, because sometimes like for RSH or even other organizations, you write reports, if it's about what the quotes, like you are having a training now, like we are having here now, and someone, you know, made a comment that we find we promote the cause of what we are doing, you know, that person, you know, has already, like, you know, said that. So it might be that, oh, okay, it will be after you've gone through and said, okay, we want to use this. Can we use this, your quotes, for a publication of our report or for whatever? But for pictures, it should be before. We just had an event on Tuesday. We disseminated a research that we conducted for our research. And as people we are registering, you know, because these are people with disabilities, as they were registering, we are giving them consent form because we'll be taking pictures. And we said, please let us know if you are not happy to be part of the picture. Again, even it was also announced, or Telen also announced it. So even if you're not signing the consent, but is there anybody here who will be taking pictures? Is there anybody here who doesn't want their pictures taken? You know, first indicate so that we know, will respect your wish. So this is about respecting your wish, respecting your rights, and not involve you in the pictures, because it will be somehow, it wouldn't work if at the end, you know, someone doesn't give consent, other people have given consent, and this other person hasn't given consent. Maybe, and meanwhile, they are in that group picture. So how do you now do it? Do you not use everything, you know, or do you start blurring, you know, the face of the people that don't want? So really, for the person that asked that question, it should be really at the beginning. It should be at the beginning, you know, of before you take the pictures. But indeed, again, you know, we are all still learning. I mentioned it when I was presenting that I've worked in an organization that we say, oh yes, we take consent. And, you know, really, it's not really followed through. You go to communities, you just start snapping, and then with phones, it's easier. You have your phone, you're just snapping away without really asking the people if they really want their pictures to be taken or not. So I think we are all guilty one way or the other, but, you know, now that we've learned it, let's try to now put it into action. Let's try to practicalize that. So that's what I would say around the consent one. Then in terms of length to destroy, I think that's merely a suggestion. So yes, you can work with the available laws, but again, so working with available laws, and now have it, once you have it in your policy, that after 20 years, you need to destroy, since, you know, like information that has people's data that you are not using again. So if there is a project that you did in year 2000 and it's not being referred to again, and then you still have details of people that you shared materials to, and then you see 20 years down the line, you really don't need those names and that, why still have them? So if you have it, you know, have a lawyer. You can have a lawyer that will help you to review what will be the appropriate time to put in your policy, would be when we will destroy, you know, materials that are not being used. Then
Thank you very much. Do you have another one quickly so that?
Yeah, it was the last one around, is it wrong to take pictures? So I would say it's not wrong. It's not wrong to take pictures of the work you are doing, but again, let the pictures be dignified, and also, you know, protect the person, and not a way to just show people in poverty and that, but let it maintain people's dignity. That's what I would say to that, but it's not wrong. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I'll now hand over to my erudite co-chair, Oyedamola Aramide, to conduct the rest of this session.
Thank you, Dr. Eleanor. Let me quickly read through one of the questions here in the chat. So someone is asking, if a child is abused and you have followed up the case and you want the public to be aware of the case, what are the processes you have to take after getting the consent from the parent's child? That question is from Ladi Ibrahim. I don't think that it has been answered. Okay.
All right. Yeah, we didn't see that. Thank you very much, Oyedamola, for bringing that up. So yes, a child has been abused, but please, as you're sharing, some people, like share pictures on WhatsApp, even with, the private parts, really, I must say, of the survivor, that is not appropriate. When sharing pictures, when sharing information, just share the info, what happened. You don't need to put the name of the child, because you're actually really re-traumatizing the whole incident. So you don't have to put the name of the child. You don't have to put the picture where the child will be identified. So even with the consent, really, with such a case that is sensitive, I'm assuming that is sexual abuse here. It might be physical abuse, but I'm assuming it's sexual abuse. So please, let's not re-traumatize this child. Share the information, share the facts, not without the identifying components that will help to identify who this particular, because what you want to do really at the end of the day is to bring justice, or is to provide psychosocial. So as you're pursuing justice, also don't forget the child, because that's usually also what happens in terms of child protection. Is we are pursuing justice against the perpetrator, forgetting the child that needs that support, that psychosocial support, that psychological first aid, to be able to come out through this very emotional, distressing situation. So that's what I would say to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Oge. So we still have a few hands raised, but before I call Maureen Udiaga to ask a question, let me quickly check to be sure that our partners from giving.ng are not yet in the room. They're supposed to come on to speak to us very briefly. If they are not, if they are, please just have your hand raised. Okay, yeah, okay, I see Mrs. Ibekwe. So Mrs. Ibekwe, you'll be coming on board now after we take this question from Maureen. So Maureen, please allow Maureen to unmute so that she can ask a question, and then we'll take Mrs. Ibekwe. Hello, Maureen. Please ask your question. Okay. Maureen, you are unmuted. You can ask your question. We cannot hear you if you're speaking.
Okay, hi. Okay.
Hello.
Please, can we hear me? Oh my God.
Yes, we can, but you need to.
Yes, hello. Can
speak
you hear
up
me
a
now?
little louder. Yes, great. This is great.
Okay. So, my question is based on an experience I had in a meeting I was privileged to be part of, and the organizers, the people that came for the meeting, they were seeking for consent to take pictures, and surprisingly, all of them turned it down and said no. They all echoed, no, we don't want our pictures to be taken. So now my question is, in most of the work that we do, we need some kind of M&E as to showcase our work. So in such case, you've already organized a program, and your participants are saying no. All of them are saying no. They don't want. They are not giving in to the consent of taking pictures. What do you do in that case?
I would say respect their wishes, but before them echoing no like that, maybe there's a precedent. of what happened earlier that you might not have been aware of. You know, I've been doing community work. I know people don't usually just say no to pictures, you know, or to, we might have a few people saying no, but for everyone to echo like that might be that there is a precedence, you know, so that's why we need to make sure that we communicate and get the consent, informed consent, and use the consent as we, you know, based on the information that how we said we will use it will be how we will use it, and not use it for something else when we said if it's meant for reports, let it be just a report, let it not go into websites as case studies when, you know, we didn't say that we're going to use it for case studies. I'm aware of time that we have just 2 minutes now to the end of the webinar. Some other unanswered questions can still be put up and answered by the time we have this up, by the time we have the link up on our website, because now I think we need to do poll and other closing formalities for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oge. So I am aware that we actually have a few minutes left, but I crave your indulgence to ask for just a few more minutes extension so that we can bring Mrs. Ibekwe on board. She's ready to speak now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Oyindamola, thank you very much. And that was a very wonderful session. I must really appreciate our panelists. And also thank everyone who is in the room who has joined this timely session. My name is Olakweju Ibekwe. I'm the CEO of Sterling One Foundation. And I'm going to be speaking to Giving.ng today, which is one of our partner initiatives. Giving.ng is a crowdfunding platform, but it's also the first one that is free in Africa today. So you can raise funds for your social impact project on Giving.ng for free. If there's going to be any payment on it, maybe it's just the payment gateway charges, because we've also plugged in Flutterwave and Paystack into Giving.ng. You can access funds, you can raise funds from anywhere in the world, because we have plugged in this payment gateway to enable you do that. So you can raise funds from diaspora, from Nigeria also. Giving.ng would also partner with you on your project. Also, the unique thing about Giving.ng is you can access grants up to ₦1 million for your social impact project on Giving.ng. So if your project is in any of the critical sectors, health, education, food security, renewable energy, you can access a grant. All you have to do is register on Giving.ng, and it's very easy to register on Giving.ng. You just go to www.giving.ng. Giving means G-I-V-I-N-G. Giving, that's the word, the present continuous tense of give. G-I-V-I-N-G. .ng, giving.ng. And as a registered NGO, the 3 major documents you have to provide are your registration certificate, CAC, your memorandum and articles of association, and 2 valid means of ID of 2 of the board of directors or the board of trustees. And that is all the 3 major requirements you need to provide. We usually do due diligence just because we have a responsibility to our donors and to you, our partners, also to ensure that it is only valid organizations that will be able to raise funds on Giving.ng. And that's it. You put up your project, you start raising funds. Normally, you need at least 100 donors to be able to access the grants. But for every member of the Nigerian network of NGOs, in partnership with Mr. Oyebisi, we've made that just 50. You get up to 50 people to donate towards your project. And whatever the balance is required is less than or equal to ₦1 million, you get the money immediately. So it's another way for you to access alternative funding for that great work you are doing, touching lives across the country. So I believe there's all you have to do is go there and register today, and we'll be on hand to support you to raise funds for your project, and beyond that to also access the Giving.ng grants. I must also mention that also in partnership with the Nigerian Network of NGOs and Sterling Bank, we have a free banking product for NGOs called Sterling Cares. And what free means is that you never ever have to pay transfer charges ever again during the lifetime of that banking account. And it's also, you don't need to even open it with any balances, zero balance. And that can be opened at any of the Sterling Bank branches. Or there's a link that I believe one of my colleagues has put in the chat that you can always use to put in your details. And then we'll reach out to you to let you know how we can support you, both to onboard on giving.ng and also to get the benefits of the free banking account, among so many other things that we have in stock for you. But because of our time, those are the two major things I'd like to speak to today. Oyindamola, grateful for the time. And I can take one or two questions because I know our time is gone.
Thank you, Mrs. Ibekwe. Very briefly, do we have questions for Mrs. Ibekwe? If we do not, as Dr. Eleanor has noted in the chat, questions will be addressed when the slides are sent to participants after the event. But I think Mrs. Dr. Eleanor wants to still say a few things. Dr. Eleanor.
Really just to bring the meeting to a close so that we're respectful of one another's time, and to say that's all we have time for today. Thank you again to our partners, Triple NGO. Thank you to Oge for her informative presentation and taking the questions, and to reassure those who still have questions that the questions will be answered even as we share the proceedings of today's meeting. For further information, we have several resources on the Nigeria Resource and Support Hub, and you will see in the chat the link to that. And we also encourage you to access our newsletter. Thank you and wish you all the very best for the rest of the week. Bye for now.